Hello and welcome to my new video. Boozy. Oh god, rewind. Hello and welcome to my channel, Boozy Bookish Thoughts. I'm Justine, or Jay if you prefer, and welcome to my new video. So today we are doing my October wrap-up. I am proud to say that I have read 4 books this November, although I'm kind of cheating because one of them was a short story and the other was only a novella. So technically 2 novels and 2 shorter works. But still, that's an achievement for me, especially considering the last 2 months. So let's celebrate snaps. And to get into it a little bit, let's talk about my currently reading Magpie Murders. It is a pretty interesting book. It does contain potentially triggering content, which I will talk about more when I wrap it up. However, it is very interesting and it's drawing me in. And like I said in my previous video, I find that the potentially triggering content is handled quite well and not just for shock value. So I'm appreciating it and I'm still able to enjoy it. That being said, I don't know how I'm going to review it or wrap it up without being too spoilery. So that's a problem for my November wrap up. Let's see. But for the books I did finish, those are Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, Potions and Predicaments by Morgan Vale, and then the short story is Spring in the Haunted Forest by A.H. Lee, and the novella is Enthralled by A.H. Lee. I'm sorry. I share a wall with my sister. But so both of those books are part of the Knight and the Necromancer universe. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. We are still drinking Hope's End, as you can see. Next week there will be a new wine, probably a rosé, but I'm not sure yet. I will see. Anyway, so we will talk about this in order. Now, Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, I have talked about this a ton already because I was reading this for the longest time, much longer than the 7 hours that it felt like much longer than the 7 hours that the audiobook actually took up. And honestly, it wasn't that great. It was incredibly underwhelming. I found the main character, the main narrator, to be incredibly tedious, and while I can sympathize that she's treated quite poorly by some of the minor characters from some of the other characters, she is incredibly wishy-washy, and she does not have a clear goal in what she wants, which I think is incredibly necessary for a character to be compelling. They need to want something, and what she wants is incredibly wishy-washy, and her character development was basically non-existent, and all the changes that occurred between the start and the final product when the book ended was not substantiated by any other compelling arcs, you know? So I found her to be a very weak narrator, very weak main character, very weak driving force in the plot. Some of the other characters were a lot more compelling, a lot more interesting. In fact, I found their stories, or when the story would focus on them, to be a lot more interesting and a lot more gripping. That being said, the main twist was very predictable. Some say that if a twist is predictable, then it's a good story, but honestly, I want it to be more obvious in hindsight and not obvious coming into it. You know what I mean? Like, I want to look back and have everything make sense, but I don't want to know what it is ahead of time. Because then what's the point of the twist, you know? So in this case, I guessed most of the main twists, and didn't find any of them that surprising. So overall, it's a wash for me. I was really excited to read this book, and although I had heard some lukewarm reviews about it from other YouTubers, I was quite optimistic about it, and I figured it would only be 7 hours. It's a pretty fast audiobook, but oh my god, it took me so long, and it's the main reason is simply that I did not care. So let me drink some wine after that. The next book that I read was Potions and Predicaments by Morgan Vale. This is about a potion maker who gets drawn into an investigation when her rival winds up dead. This is a paranormal cozy mystery. She is a witch, and there is witchcraft and magic to aid in the investigation. Although I will say overall, there is not a lot of magic in this. If you are looking for fantasy world building, this is not it. Not that you expect a lot of world building in a book that's less than 300 pages, but it does happen. Like the Knight and the Necromancer series that I will talk about a little bit later does excellent world building within also less than 300 pages. So this is not a book for magical world building. They barely use magic. It is basically like her cell phone. Like, she uses magic basically like a cell phone or like a flashlight. It is just a handy plot device for her to use for her to find clues and move the plot forward. That being said, the characters were interesting, but they weren't that compelling. The entire plot was also interesting, but not exactly compelling. I did appreciate the way they brought all the threads together and the like twist that they used at the end. It was definitely, they definitely didn't go for the cheap shock value twist, and instead went for something a little bit more emotional and a little bit more human, which was not something that I expected to see in a book like this. So it was nice, but overall it was enjoyable, but ultimately mediocre. I probably will not be continuing the series. But like I said, I don't really have anything bad to say about it aside from it being mediocre. But I won't be continuing the series. It just wasn't enjoyable enough or compelling enough. The next 2 books I read in quick succession, both in the same night, and in fact I read all 3 of these books, or I finished all 3 of these books today. And those are Spring in the Haunted Forest, which is a short story. It's less than 50 pages long, or only about 50 pages long, I think. And this is like a sequel to the Knight and the Necromancer series. It shows the 2 main characters, who are the Knight and the Necromancer, who are now together, happily together, and have been happily together for a year. It shows them like returning to the Necromancer's tower where he grew up with his former master, and it's just fluff. It is pure and simple fluff. And the reason I read this was because I had put it on the unfinished list. However, when I read it, I realized I had actually read it already. So I'm a little unclear on how to classify this. You also can find this on Goodreads for some reason. And I think I got this through an author giveaway. But it's very light and fluffy, and it's adorable. And these are 2 of my absolute favorite romance characters, so I loved seeing them together and just being sweet on each other. It's the best. 5 out of 5. I couldn't rate it because, like I said, I can't find it on Goodreads, but if I could, 5 out of 5. The other book is on Goodreads, and this is, I think, a little less than 100 pages long, so it qualifies as a novella. And this is the Enthralled. Now, this is also a sequel to the series. However, it focuses on different characters, or on a different couple. This is focused on the Necromancer's friend who like helps him out, and this takes place several years into the future, like several years after Spring in the Haunted Forest. So it involves him spending a night in the Necromancer's Tower, and then his former lover shows up unexpected and comes into the tower because there's a blizzard outside, and then creepy happenings start happening, and his lover is obviously deeply distressed and says he's in some kind of trouble, and he really wants to talk to the necromancer to try and help fix things, but there's a lot of mystery and a lot of intrigue, and I can't tell you more without giving too much away because again, it's only like 90 pages long. But it's just a really good short little romance novella. And there, like I said earlier, it packs a lot of world building into the short space that it has. 'Cause of course, a lot of the world building was already done in the main series, and I don't think you can really read this without having read the main series. But I did find this very adorable, very sweet, and it managed to expand on the world because obviously this is set several years after the last book and several years after the second prequel. So since then, it expanded on the world, it updated you on the characters, and it gave you a new look into the world in a different way from a different perspective. So it is an excellent expansion in the universe, and again, 5 out of 5. I loved it. Can't say anything more. I just love this author. This is ultimately one of my all-time favorite series and one of my all-time favorite universes. She is an excellent author. I do have some nitpicks about her other fantasy work, but this one is perfect and I love it. So that is my October wrap up. It was pretty short, not that much to say because like I said, 2 of the books I read are really short, but I have officially finished my unfinished list cycle, and just in time because there weren't any of it that I was really comfortable reading because I just can't handle anything too long and complicated at this point. And so I'm looking forward to next month's wrap up. I'm hoping to be able to read a lot because I'm going to be very generous with myself in terms of the books I'm going to be reading. If you want to hear about those, please check out my video last Tuesday, which is my November TBR. And in the meantime, leave a like, leave a comment, all that fun stuff. And cheers!